ask the question to also give the name of your organization. And just an FYI, as it says here, and we've said in our invitation that we will be posting the video on our website, both the recording of the session and as well as the session slides. So you'll have access to all of this information following up. So first, I'll tell you just a bit about Impact100 DC. Impact100 DC is a global model with over 50 chapters in the United States and beyond. At its core, 100 or more women come together, pool annual membership contributions of $1,000 each to form a $100,000 high impact grant. We invite grants in 5 focus areas: health and wellness, education, family, arts and culture, and environment. We are a new group. This is our founding year, and we will have 1 high impact grant available this year, and we will be announcing the exact amount on January 26th, the date before the application period opens. But what we hope, our ongoing goal, is to build this community to 500 members so that we have 5 $100,000 grants to award in each focus area. So Impact100 DC, Impact100 is an all volunteer model. Members lead and participate in all aspects of the organization, including grant review, which is coming up. So now I'll turn for a minute to Impact100 DC, because though we are under the Impact100 umbrella and delighted to be under it, we are our own independent entity with our 501c3 status, with an organization-specific mission and vision, their own bylaws. So we got our start last August 2019, and we began with the creation of that mission and vision, which has served us well and is really truly woven into every decision and aspect of our operations. Our mission is to help fuel the work of community nonprofit organizations like yours, working to address unmet needs in our area. We are really honored and excited to be able to support some of your good work. You all are the heroes, you're the boots on the ground, you know where the needs are, and you know how best to address them. So we are honored to be on that journey with you, even if just for a bit. Our vision is to highlight those unmet needs as well, and to highlight the organizations who are working to address them, and particularly needs resulting from systemic racism and inequity. We are working very intentionally to build a community with the diversity of voices that will allow us to view proposals with a wide lens. And we are providing an avenue for women to be active philanthropists and effective voices for change. So that is a very brief summary of who we are. We have our whole grants team with us tonight, and you'll get to meet each of them. Right now, we'll turn to Bonnie Harkness, who's the chair of the Family Focus Area Committee, and she'll give you a bit more detailed information about the focus areas.
Hi, as Anne has mentioned, we have 5 focus areas. One is environment, and that includes projects that improve or preserve the natural and built environments. It also includes neighborhood crime and violence. All of these descriptions are summaries, but not exclusive. So there may be other subjects that fall into one of the categories. Arts and culture includes projects that foster greater exposure or participation in the arts, and priority will be given to those who serve underserved communities. Then we have family, which includes individuals, children, families, and in particular, people who have been the subject of systemic racism. And obviously, the most dire needs are housing, living wage, food insecurity, job skills training, and others. Then we have education, which includes projects that improve learning opportunities for students and may provide for early childhood education, language and literacy training, tutoring and mentoring, and especially for populations who've experienced systemic discrimination. And finally, we have health and wellness, which includes projects that address access to healthcare, and especially for people who have been the subject of discrimination or who are incarcerated individuals. And it also includes projects for healthy living. So those are our 5 focus areas, which you will have the opportunity in your grant to choose which focus area you think you most well fit in, and you can also offer a second choice. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to welcome you all for coming to our session tonight. And I'm Dorothy Durden, and I am one of the board secretary, and my focus area is on education. And I want to speak to you. I'm sure you probably looked at the website and seen a lot of this, but I want to briefly go over what the eligibility requirements are for the grant. First, you need to be a tax-exempt organization, a 501c3. We're looking for organizations that have budgets between $3 million and $5 million, and that you have 3 years of financial records. As we said, we want to serve the local community, and that includes the District of Columbia, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Fairfax, Arlington, or cities of Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax. If you're a new organization and you have this grassroots program that you want to put forward, and you are able to partner with an organization that does have a 501c3, we welcome you to do so. Going on, the project should relate to one of the 5 focus areas. Although we're awarding one of those, we do look for one of those 5 focus areas that was just spoken about. And then we do expect you to use those funds within 24 months. And your total project budget should be approximately the full amount of the grant, and that'll be announced sometimes later. So just something to keep in mind, some of the things we are not able to fund at this time is debt reduction, operating deficits, and so on, individuals or private organizations, activities that are religious or political in nature, or things such as fund drives, annual appeals, fundraising, and the like.
Hi, good evening. I'm Latina Ficanye. I am the Vice President and Finance Committee Chair. I'll be talking a little bit about operating costs. We know this is an area where many funders and grants don't cover operating costs. And so in light of the current pandemic, we know that there is a need for more flexibility in this area, particularly this year. That said, we will continue to prioritize grant proposals with project budgets that reflect 15% or less towards operating costs. That is actually a 5% increase over what we had previously committed to, 10%. So if you look at our website, it probably still says 10%, but we've increased that to 15%. So in that regard, we're looking at those operating costs as being organizational wide costs, administrative costs, versus those direct projects that versus those direct project costs that relate only to the proposed project and or program. So, we'll be flexible in reviewing the proposals put forth, but I want to highlight that change for this group. As we go on to our grant evaluation criteria, as might be implied by the name of the organization, Impact100, we really are looking to focus on projects that are transformational in nature. So those initiatives that are really looking to kind of move the needle or take that organization to the next level as it relates to projects that are visionary, pursue change, maybe innovative in nature, or perhaps you have an existing project or program where you're expanding your reach, looking to provide that service outside of your current operating area or to a new target group. Those are things that we would consider transformational in nature. And we really want those that are looking to address unmet needs in our community. I mean, I don't think we can really ignore the fact that there's been an increased focus on racial inequity. And so Impact100 DC is looking to really highlight and put prominence to those issues. And so projects that are intending to reach marginalized populations will be a particular area of focus for us. So we're really looking for those proposals to explain what the impact is, what is the community that you're targeting, how is that strategic in nature to the organization and to the issue, how sustainable is that project? We'll get into a little bit more detail around kind of the timing of the grant and when we expect those funds to be expended, but we're really hoping that some of these projects will live beyond the Impact100 DC grant. And so, is there a plan to sustain that project? If it is short-term in nature, those are projects we are also willing to fund. Just help us understand the scope of it. We know that there may be projects that are specifically related to some of the fallout from COVID-19. And so those may be more shorter term projects. So those are definitely in scope of the grant. We just want to understand what does that timeline look like, and if there is a need that is sustainable in nature, that grant proposal clearly outlines that. And then we also want to understand how the organization is looking at success. And so is the plan well-defined? Are there measurable metrics? How is the organization planning on tracking and reporting on those key metrics? So those are things that we really want to understand as we look at the grant. So moving on, a little bit more detail around what does that mean. So we've provided a little bit more of a definition, particularly as relates to what does it mean to use a racial equity lens. We know that can mean a lot of different things for different people, especially when you kind of use a broad term. And so what we really want to acknowledge is those projects that have a sense of, to the extent necessary, that project is going to address areas that have been structurally or institutionally areas of inequity or bias, particularly where that disadvantage impacts people of color or other marginalized groups such as LGBTQ plus communities, immigrant communities, and people with disabilities. So our goal of using a racial equity lens is not to suggest that only projects that are explicit to a racial or bias issue, but that there is some reflection of how the population in which you're serving by that project may be impacted by racial or other inequities. So, writing and submitting your grant application. This is an area where we've spent a great deal of time really trying to provide a simple process as much as possible. We've decided to use an application that is fairly consistent with the Washington Regional Association of Grantmakers common application. So we've made various tweaks throughout the application to make it specific to Impact100 DC and our eligibility criteria and funding priorities. However, where applicable, we've used conforming definitions and terms. So those of you that are familiar with the Washington Regional Association of Grantmakers common application should find it fairly familiar, but naturally there are areas that we did need to make adjustments for to make it relevant to us. So, how to apply. We've decided to use an online platform to submit grant applications. It's called Submittable. Submittable is a free account, so you can go in and sign up at any point in time. The Impact100 DC grant application for 2021 will not be available until December 27th. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our timeline. But you don't have to wait until the application's live to go in and sign up, create an account, familiarize yourself with the platform as a whole. There are product demos available. Like I said, that you can create a free account and be notified when the Impact100 DC grant is available. There's a number of features that may make that platform something that you want to look into for other purposes, but we found it relatively user-friendly, so we hope that it will provide a pretty good user experience for the applicants as you go through and complete and submit your application. In terms of transparency, we want to provide some information in terms of what's going to happen behind the scenes once you submit your application. So this is more just a peek behind the curtain. This really doesn't involve steps that the applicants will need to go through, but just to let you know what our process looks like. We are only asking the applicants to submit one proposal. There will not be a separate LOI and then application process. Everything will be completed together in that online submittable portal. Once all of the applications are in at the end of our grant application process, we will then go in and review all of the applications. We will make determinations based on the proposals received, which get elevated to our semifinal stage. We're calling that round 3, as reflected in the slide here. There will be kind of an internal round 2, which will do a finance review on the forms and documents provided. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of financial statements and 990s that will be required. But we'll review through all of that information as we make determinations on semifinalists. Once those semifinalists are identified, we will contact you directly. So there's really nothing more for the applicant to do between submitting the application and then waiting to hear a grant acceptance response from the grant committee.
Okay. So hi, I'm Janelle Haskell. I am chairman of the Arts and Culture Focus Area Committee. I wanted to talk to you about transparency and confidentiality. All of the Impact 100 members who will be reviewing these grants will be filling out a questionnaire to reveal any potential conflicts of interest. We will review all those documents. Everyone will sign an affidavit agreeing to abide by Impact 100's rules regarding conflict of interest. And if needed, people will be recused or put on different committees or whatever. Next, required attachments. I'm not going to read these to you specifically. I think the attachments that will be required for your application are fairly standard. Anybody who's done a grant application before is probably familiar with all of these. There will be income statements, budget statements, some IRS forms. They are all listed on our website, and they will also be listed in Submittable when you go to put in your application. So pretty standard.
Can I just interrupt for a second? I'm sorry, Janelle.
Yeah.
Hi, folks. I'm Sharon Dennis, and I'm chair of the Grants Committee. I just wanted to tell you, probably like, why are these people texting back and forth? We've had a little problem with Zoom. Prior to this call, we upgraded our Zoom account to allow several hundred participants on this call, and for some reason Zoom has closed participation to 100 folks, so we've got people waiting in the waiting room who can't get in, and we're just that's why Ann, I think, just took off to call Zoom and find out what's going on. So I apologize for that. We will take care of the folks who were not able to participate in this meeting, I promise, but just so you know, that's what's going on behind the scenes. Okay, thank you, and go ahead, Janelle.
I think Vivian is up.
So
Yes. Oh. Did you want to say something, Anne?
I do.
Okay, sure.
I mean, I have been on the phone with them and they've fixed it, but we may have to stop the meeting and restart it. And in that case, do people just come in again? I open it up and people come in again?
I think we should just go forward and then ask all of those who didn't hear the beginning to hang on at the end, and we can go over what they may have missed.
Okay, well, thank you.
I mean,
You know, and I think it's okay. We do have the recording going.
True. Okay.
Okay. So thank you. I will just talk very briefly about common application errors. Okay. So, and also this is just the idea, because I'm literally going through a couple slides of things that went wrong, but I think it's just very helpful. And I know in terms of, you know, my experiences of working in grants, anything that sort of just pulls out or highlights what you know, just common pitfalls, it just really helps you avoid them. So that's the idea around these common application errors. First, application was not complete. We are hoping that by using the platform that we chose, Submittable, that it should be very clear when you have actually completed the application. But you know, just make sure you click submit, that you actually arrive at a screen that says that you've finished, it has been submitted, and then you should get response emails back. So just pay attention to that. And if you haven't gotten to a screen that says it's been submitted, you have not submitted yet. Next, impact of initiative is unclear. I think this is very important, especially as we were discussing, for example, the you know, flexibilities around operating expenses, and you know, maybe if your organization or your mission falls potentially under one or more focus area, we really want to hear very clearly what is the intended impact. How are you helping your target community members? So please, very clear statement of your goals and what you hope to accomplish with our impact grant. Funding primarily for maintenance of mission rather than transformational project. Again, this speaks to clarity, and also just reminding you that your community members, constituents, who you plan to serve should be the focus, the very clear focus in every statement that you make on the application. Project budget and narrative do not align. You know, based on our commitment to transparency and financial accountability, we must pass those expectations on to you and your budget. We can't have any ambiguities. So please just make sure, especially if you're going through and making any changes, make sure your budget and your narrative correspond. Budget was unrealistic, unclear, or lacking in detail. Again, goes back to clarity and also grounding your project and your goals in the very reality in which we're living. No concrete plan for sustaining initiative after grant ended. Latina spoke to this, and the idea is that this is an impact grant, but sustainability will be one of the areas that we will score highly when we see an applicant who has thoroughly planned and explained the sustainability of their initiative. Next slide, please. Oh, I think one more back. Okay, and thank you. Continuing, inadequate data to support the need for initiative. Here we are in 2021. Everyone is thoroughly familiar with the expectation of research, having the data to back up your goals and your mission. And I have full confidence that applicants, that you all will be able to support your application with data, because there's just more and more every day, it seems. Evaluation process for determining success of project unclear. Again, this goes to accountability. Please, I encourage your application to not only be well-rounded in terms of with the goal of serving your community, but you've got to be able to measure success, and we do that by reflection and evaluation. Vision not clearly articulated, more of the same, and grant request would fund current programming. This is key, and maybe you have not necessarily heard it as much throughout the presentation, but innovation and seeing transformation take place in the project that you are proposing is just another area where we'd really score highly to see an element of innovation in your application. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sure you guys have been sitting on the edge of your seat, wanting more information on timeline. I think we kind of touched on earlier that the size of our grant, our big reveal, will happen on January 26th. So you will be made aware. Information will be put on our website in terms of the actual amount of the grant. And then immediately following that on the 27th, we will open the application to make it available for applicants to start applying. So our grant application period will go from January 27th through March 8th. Once we've closed the application period and are no longer accepting new applicants, we'll start reviewing what we've received. And as I mentioned earlier, there's some behind the scenes review that will happen, 2 rounds that won't involve a direct interaction with the applicants. And then beginning on kind of what we're calling the 3rd round, we'll start notifying semi-finalists, progressing to site visits from there. Once we've gotten through that process, we will narrow the semi-finalists down to the finalists, which we're expecting to be able to announce in early June. And then throughout the course of the summer and throughout June, we will have our finalists put together a small little package to then be able to present for a vote in September 2021. So that will be our annual awards celebration. So this is really it. We are so looking forward to all of those innovative, amazing projects that we know are out there. And we just can't wait for January 26th when we reveal the size of the grant, and then January 27th when we open it up. Thank you.
So
And
that,
so I'll, oh, go ahead.
no, you go, Latina.
No, I was just going to turn it over to you to see if we had questions in the chat.
We have no questions in the chat box. So should we unmute? We have about 100 folks on the call, but raise your hand or use the little button.
Hi, I'm sorry. I just wanted to point out that the chat is disabled on my end. So I do
Oh.
have a question I would have wanted to add in there though.
Please,
Yeah, same
please
here.
add. Huh.
Hmm.
Technology.
Well, do
It
you,
looks like it's now able.
There we go. Okay. Well, let's do both. Let's do both, oral and written. So go ahead. I'm sorry, whoever was talking. Yeah.
So I'm
ahead.
going to stop the share so we can all see each other a little better. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay.
So who has a question? I think the chat box is working now, but
I can chime in with an oral question if that's okay.
sure.
Hi, I'm Gabby Majewski from DC Affordable Law Firm. I wasn't able to connect my audio with the Zoom in the beginning, and so I may have missed this, but are you intending to fund one grant per focus area, or is it one grant that you'll be making in total? And the second question is, what is the timeline for the grant itself be applied to the project? I thought I heard 24 months, but if you could kindly clarify that, that would be.
Well, I can answer the first question. Except I forget what it was because I'm so rattled
we're
by all the
funding,
technical problems.
we're funding
Whether it was
one
per
grant.
area or-
We are funding one grant this year. We hope to have, somewhere in the vicinity of $100,000, be in the vicinity of 100 members, but we'll announce that on the 26th. But our hope is, as we go along beyond this founding year, that we'll get to the point where we can fund one high impact grant in each focus area. And I'll let Sharon answer the second question.
sorry, what I'm looking at, I'm going through now, we have a million questions.
I can answer.
So
I
I
can
will
answer.
say,
Oh.
I didn't realize it was disabled. I thought I had sent a chat to all of you just to clarify. So just to clarify, so everybody knows, we misspoke when we said the annual budget range for your organization should be 3 million to 5 million. It's 300,000 to 5 million. So much broader scope. What was the second part of the question?
When is the grant paid over? So what's the period of the grant?
So the grant, so we will make the announcement in September. And then we just have to do some work in terms of signing contracts with the organization. We should be able to make, and we will be not making an entire payment in the first time. We will, I'm not 100% sure how we're going to do it, and it might be something that we negotiate with the grantee, but we will be paying it out over time. So it might be 2 payments, it could be 3. I'm not 100% sure about that, but we should be able to make the grant payable as soon as we get all the contracts signed. So,
And then we're expecting it to be expended over a 24-month period.
Right.
Okay, Lee Bailey from One World Education has a question. Could we get clarification on this requirement? In possession of at least 3 full years of independently audited or reviewed financial statements, do statements have to be audited or just prepared by an outside person?
Right. So thanks for asking this question. I know it has been a question for a lot of you. Your financial statements do not have to be audited. In fact, that organizations with smaller annual budgets, say a $200,000 budget, there's no requirement, legal requirement to have an audit. What we're talking about is that we want a second set of eyes reviewing your financial statements so that there's some verification. There's been some process of verification for your statement of revenues and expenses, which is basically the best practice of every nonprofit organization. So no, you don't have to have it audited. In the case of larger organizations where it's legally required to have an audit, yes, then we would expect to see your audited statements.
Okay, Kia Chapman from Beacon House asks if it would be helpful to review some of the projects funded by other Impact 100 chapters. I would say yes to that. There are some wonderful organizations that have been in existence for 20 years. So, and their website is chock full of examples of projects and videos and that sort of thing. So sure, I would recommend that.
The only thing I would maybe add to that, Anne, is that because our mission, we are focused on marginalized populations and underrepresented populations, which may or may not have been the focus of other Impact 100 organizations in their funding of various projects. So I would, just keep that in the back of your mind as you look at other projects.
That's true. Each organization has its own mission and vision and its own criteria for evaluating. But to look at a number of organizations, you'd get a sampling.
Anne and Sharon, we've had a couple of questions about collaboration. What does that sort of look like? Partnerships, and is it something you prefer, or would you prefer that people not partner? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I can take a stab at that if you'd like. We don't have a preference one way or another. In fact, this decision will be made by our members who will be joining the focus area committees, who will be reviewing your applications. So whatever happens depends on what these women read and think of your applications. But given that we don't have a preference one way or another, we do want to be sure to allow smaller, newer organizations to have a chance for getting this grant. But we also have certain requirements like the $300,000 or up budget. So what we ask in that case, if you're a new organization, you don't have the 3 years of financial statements or the big enough budget, look for a partner organization that meets that criteria. What we would expect by the time you file an application with us, though, is that you have a memorandum of understanding between the two organizations and that you've clearly mapped out your project plan and who's doing what and who's being paid what in the budget and budget narrative. So yes, absolutely, partnerships are welcome. We want to be as inclusive as possible. Just be very specific in how it's going to work.
Hey, another question we have here from Stephanie Carly with Access Youth. I understand that we cannot propose current programming, but what about expansion and taking existing program to a new level?
Absolutely, that's absolutely welcome, and it's absolutely one of the areas that we encourage people to pursue. I would only say if you are expanding a new project, if you're expanding an existing project, we're going to look for more information in your evaluation criteria section. So if you're a pilot project, we can't expect you to produce a lot of data on how this is working. But if you are talking about expanding an existing project, then we want to know, was that project successful? Are there grounds for us to give you the money to expand this project?
Another related question about organizations applying together. Can they do so if both are 501c3 organizations?
Yes.
Another question on, is there a preference for projects that focus on women and girls?
Anne, do you want to take this?
No, the answer is no. We have these 5 focus areas for a reason: health and wellness and education and arts and culture and environment and family. These broad focus areas, because we believe that these are all critical to sustaining healthy communities. And that's why eventually we really would like to be able to fund grants in all 5 focus areas. under which focus area would a project that focuses on empowering adult immigrants with English literacy for civic, community, and workforce engagement, education, or family? That's a question.
I actually answered her in the chat.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
I
Do you want to answer again, just so everybody hears?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's it clearly would be under education. But the nice thing is that within the application, you can select a second choice. And these focus area committees are not absolutely set in stone. There's a little flexibility and wiggle room. So, in some places it's hard to determine, but to me, English literacy is absolutely an education area. But maybe I have a bias for that because I teach English literacy, but to me, that's an education program.
But these are decisions that each individual organization will make.
Exactly.
That's one of the reasons why we've asked you to put 2 priorities. And in a rare circumstance, we may even opt to move an application to one of the other priorities. But that is your decision to make. And if your application falls into more than one focus area, and I imagine that will be the case with more than one application coming in, your application will be reviewed by only one focus area.
Is it possible to show the slides where we sort of elaborate on what's included in the focus areas? Because I see from
Absolutely.
Joni that she came in late due to space limitations and
Yes.
missed that, but we did go over that earlier. So we again apologize for that space limitation issue at the beginning, but.
Okay, there we go. The 5 focus areas.
So we're not going to reread them to you, but basically environment, would be preserving natural and built environments. We're looking for, we're prioritizing projects that are dealing with environmental issues that result from systemic racism, discrimination, lack of access to clean air and water, that sort of thing. You'll note that also says it includes projects that address neighborhood crime and violence. Arts and culture includes projects that foster greater exposure to or participation in the arts. Priority will be given to programs that, again, target underserved populations. Families, this is, I think, one we've been talking about, excuse me. It includes projects that support the lives of individuals, children, families, and seniors, especially but not limited to immigrant communities and people of color who have been the subject of systemic racism. These projects might focus on housing, earning a living wage, food insecurity, job skills training, and other basic needs. You'll see that there's a lot of crossover between this focus area and what we have listed in education. In the education focus area, we're talking about projects that expand or improve learning opportunities for students who lack access to quality education, and so on. I think what we're talking about in education is primarily a younger student body. But the issue is, you might have a tutoring program for immigrant communities that would probably fall under education rather than family. But like Anne said, I don't think I hit wellness. Ultimately, it's your story to tell about your project and which focus area you think is the best fit for you. Sorry, I left off health and wellness. Includes projects that address access to healthcare and that seek to improve the physical or mental health of people who experience discrimination. So those are the focus areas. I hope that is helpful to you. And again, like Anne said, it's really for you to decide which you think is the best fit for your organization or your project.
Essentially, the idea is that in whichever focus area committee that you choose, just lean into it in your application. What we wouldn't want to see is, for example, your English literacy class, and then you choose maybe arts as your focus area committee, and your narrative, your budget, and what have you, nothing talks about arts, but you choose arts as your focus area committee. that's essentially what we wouldn't want to see happen. But we understand that, especially when it comes to nonprofit organizations, sometimes you just end up focusing on the people and helping them, and that can fall into many categories. Depending on what kind of program you're offering. So just the goal is, having a well-aligned application, a cohesive story, a cohesive narrative, and goals, a plan to get there, and a plan to evaluate.
Robin Lingo asks if our application process was open to local chapters of national organizations. Yes, and I'll let Sharon or Latina expand on that. Yes, if it's a project that is directly related to our DMV community and has a high impact in our area and is exclusive to our area.
Right, I think that's right. And I think the fact that you say the financial reporting and auditing is done by the national office, I don't think that has that would exclude you from applying for this grant. So I'm looking at Nina, Nina's question following that. Nina from Rainbow Place Shelter, Women's Emergency Hypothermia Shelter. Would that be under family? So yes, the way we have been looking at, the way we explained it previously, individuals, families, children, seniors, those are primarily going under health and wellness, although you could certainly make an argument if you feel like your program is focused on health and wellness primarily, then like Vivian said, build a case for your program in that focus area.
And we have a question from Gregory about whether or not we have a preference for projects that affect larger, these are great questions, by the way, thank you, that affect larger numbers of people, or projects that focus on a significant investment in transforming the lives of a smaller number.
It's absolutely a great question. And we recognize that some of these very intensive programs just take a lot more resources, and they have to be directed to a much smaller population. So we will review both types of projects the same. There's no preference one way or another for large groups of people, smaller impact, small groups of people, big impact. We value both types of programs, and both are more than welcome to apply.
I think this might be a question for Latina. Could a portion of the award be used toward the creation and development of an augmented data evaluation process for work undertaken for this grant?
So is the question here, you're putting in a system to collect data to then be able to provide a measurement and tracking towards the success of the program? I would generally think that if that is a program, like a software program or something that's specific and dedicated to the program, that could be considered part of the project operating costs. If it's something that's broader and going to be used towards the organization as a whole, kind of beyond the project that's in scope of your proposal, then I would think that that would fall within the indirect operating costs and subject to kind of a minimum threshold.
In the case of a national or organization that's a local part of a national organization, would you look at the local budget or the national budget?
I would say the local budget. I mean, Latina.
In terms of, well, I just want to clarify, in terms of meeting the organizational budget amount, so the 300,000 to 5 million, or are you talking about the project budget?
Kia, are you able to respond?
She did. She said yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yes. So we would look at the local budget for the $300,000 to 5 million and the local project budget.
The next question from Mary Ellen DeAndrea is about faith-based organization, and she's concerned about our religious organizations completely ineligible. Can somebody talk about that?
Right. So you are welcome to apply as long as your program is not religious in nature. If you are, say, a ministry that serves the homeless, you're more than, and you have a 501c3 status and the other requirements, yes, you're absolutely welcome to apply for this grant. Are there any other questions out there that we missed? Okay. I don't see anything in the chat box.
One more question. Do we fund middle and high school curriculum to underserved communities? This is an in-school leadership program that empowers youth to take action on real world problems.
I would say if your school is not a 501c3, no, we don't fund programs in the public schools. We do fund after school programs run by nonprofit organizations that have tax exempt status. I will say that there's a lot of resources for you. If you look at the Department of Education website, they have a ton of information about grants that are offered in all those areas. Christine has an interesting question. If the organization is an arts and culture and mission, but producing masks for the homeless community to protect against COVID-19, are you asking which focus area you would fall into?
Yes.
Yes. I would say that is a health and wellness issue. But again, if you feel like, if that's the focus of your project, again, like we're looking for a transformational project. If you're focusing on helping protect people from COVID, that is a health and wellness issue, not an arts issue.
A couple of folks have asked if you all can reach out with further questions. And what I would say to that is and correct me if I'm misspeaking, but feel free to ask questions of grants through the website, and we will then, we're not going to get in the practice of answering individuals, but we will post an additional Q&A on our website. We already have a pretty long list of Q&As, and we'll just continue to add to it with any questions that you might have.
I will also say that because there are many questions coming in about the focus area committees, I would encourage you to think of which focus area does your project fall into. Your organization may have its mission, vision, values, what have you, but what is your project trying to address? And that is likely where your application, which focus area you'll choose.
Exactly.
Because there are many organizations that, and that's part of innovation, maybe stepping outside of the usual, boundaries that maybe correspond with your organization or the traditional mission of your organization. So I would really focus when you're deciding which focus area to choose, go for the one that the project falls into. And then also when you're talking about if you're deciding whether your organization qualifies, the 501c3 status is generally the most important thing. That's what our grant is for. It's for 501c3s. So if you have that status, please, and you meet all other requirements, please feel welcome to apply.
Do you see that last question?
Are organizations that are 501c3 but operate within DC public schools eligible? In other words, if a program serves public school students.
Yes, so if you were like communities and schools and you have a separate 501c3 status and you're in there providing resources for homeless students, you are not DCPS. You are an entity working within the walls of the school to provide services to those students, and you're a 501c3, you are absolutely welcome to apply.
Okay. Well, we do promise to add questions that you have to our Q&A section on the website, so you can keep them coming that way, and we'll do our best to keep up. It's really been a pleasure to have you all here tonight. We're excited. We're really excited to be lending a hand in some way, and we appreciate all of the work that all of these incredible organizations are doing in our beloved community. So thank you very much. Okay, and we will be seeing you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Great. There was one little one that...
So everybody needs to go have a little glass of wine to technology.
That was a good question that maybe we can follow up about. Can you apply if you don't have 3 years of a budget over 300,000? So
I can't find my screen again.
Why don't let's add that to the Q&A.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was messing around on my computer screen. What did you
A good one I thought really good was the differentiate between.
We should hold off just a second.
They're still
Yeah, I
on the
think we're,
call.
it's the question is, can the organization apply if they do not have 3 years at over 300,000? So maybe their first or second year, their annual budget was less than 300,000. But
So she's still on, the person who answered that question, so you can.
Oh, that's good.
You're still on the call.
Can somebody answer it?
I was thinking we'd
do you want to,
in the
do
Q&A.
you want me to answer it, or? do
Oh,
you want to
sure.
just-
Yeah.
Okay.
She's
So
still on.
we recognize that particularly with COVID, this past year, there has been a number of challenges with nonprofits potentially not, meeting their budgets and falling within that range. So we had discussed potentially making an exception for 1 year, if that is your, kind of 2020, 2021 fiscal year. Otherwise, we would generally expect that all 3 years you would fall within that 300,000 to 5 million range. So if your most current operating budget year is below, and that's potentially driven by COVID-19, we would allow that for this year.
Thank you, Latina. Okay. I guess we should hop off before any more questions fly in.
I think we probably should. Thank you all very, very much, Grant's team, and
Well
We'll
done.
see each other soon. Okay.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
bye, y'all. Oh, I'm going to stop the recording now.